All right, moving on to simplifying radical expressions that contain variables this time. So square root of 16x to the 14th. So I am wondering what times itself gives me this underneath the radical, 16x to the 14th. So there's a few different approaches you could take. One is trying to rewrite this as a perfect square. So what squared gives me this? So essentially you can take the square root or figure out what times itself gives you 16. That would be 4. Let's check. Is 4 squared actually 16? Yes. Then you're trying to figure out what to put here times itself or squared gives me x to the 14th. So remember, so I'm essentially going to have x raised to the what squared gives me x to the 14th. So we're trying to figure out what is that question mark. Remember, whenever you're taking a power and raising it to a power, you're multiplying. So question mark times 2. So what times 2 gives me the 14? Of course, that would be 7. Do you agree that these two things are equivalent? 4x to the 7th, that quantity squared, does give me this. Now, when you take this square root and square, those essentially just cancel out. And you're left with 4x to the 7th. So, final answer, the square root of 16x to the 14th is 4x to the 7th. Now, one additional thing, and this is kind of mentioned here, whenever you're dealing with the variables, you want to put the variables in the absolute value bars because you don't know if the x is negative or positive. But I know if I square something, it's going to be positive because a positive times a positive is still a positive and a negative times a negative is a positive. So this has to be the absolute value to make this quantity stay positive. So anytime you have a variable, you need to make sure you're taking the square root involving a variable. You need to make sure you put those absolute value bars. So 4 times the absolute value of x raised to the 7th. Check it. Boom.